Hello, good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Um, Welcome to our regular Tuesday evening. And tonight we're going on with our series of various parts of the body. And tonight we're doing probably one of the more important parts of the system. I know we started off with the cardiac system, and that's not the most important part, I don't think. Tonight we're doing the brain and the nervous system, which is possibly a little bit more important because it's our central control system. And without our brain, we don't live. Our heart can be kept going artificially for some significant time. But without the brain or the nervous system, we're in a serious spot of trouble. So I hope everybody can hear me because I'm not hearing me that clearly. Okay, there we go. I'm going to share my screen and get going with my presentation. Okay. So we're doing the brain and brain health this week and probably the next couple of weeks as well. So I'm going to go through some basic facts. Once again, this is a slightly more technical thing, so I am doing a little bit deeper dive into the individual anatomical areas. So we are going to be covering the brain and some basic facts about your brain that you may or may not have known about. Messages to and from one side of the body are usually handled by the opposite side of the brain. So when you move your left hand, it's your right-hand side of the brain that's working, and vice versa. The folded, crumpled structure of the cerebrum contains an enormous amount of small and large grooves and bulges, which greatly increases its overall surface area. So we've got an awful lot of stuff up here in this little fishbowl, crash helmet, call it what you will, but there's a lot of brain space tucked into a very, very small area. Because of its design, the surface area of the cerebral cortex is tripled, and if laid flat, would cover an area of about 0.3 square meters, which is quite a large area. There are no pain receptors in the brain, so it can feel no pain. So, interesting fact there, when you have a headache, it's not your brain that's hurting. It's rather the muscles around the scalp that's hurting, or other issues, but it's not your brain itself. And some of these things are, there are 160,935 kilometers of blood vessels in the brain alone. It takes a lot of blood to keep it going. There are 100 billion neurons or nerve cells in the brain. Not too sure who counted them, but we'll believe them. Each neuron has between 1,000 and 10,000 synapses, which are the connectors with other neurons. If you've ever looked at a spider's web, that's pretty much what your neurons look like. And where the one strand joins to the other, that would be your synapse. And as we age, the neurons die. So when you're born, technically you're a lot cleverer than when you die. But you've got a lot more brain power at birth than you do when you die. But the brain is also a muscle to a certain extent, and it needs to be exercised. For most areas of the brain, we do not seem to make new neurons after birth, but in some areas, we are able to make new neurons. The human brain is the fattest organ in the body, consisting of at least 60% fat. So the next time somebody calls you a fathead, you say, yes, thank you for the compliment. That must make me quite clever. When we're awake, our brain generates between 20 and 23 watts of power, or enough energy to power a light bulb. So again, somebody calls you bright, you say, yes, it's my brain operating. Humans experience about 70,000 thoughts each day. That's quite a few thoughts running through our little mind. Children who learn 2 languages before the age of 5 alter their brain structure to have much denser gray matter as adults. I'm hearing a bit of background noise over here. Not too sure where it's coming from. Hope it's not me. So I think of my little granddaughter, and I suspect that she's going to be quite bright later on. Not only did she have a lot of omega-3 before birth and after birth, but she has bilingual parents. So her mother speaks English to her and her father speaks Afrikaans to her. So she's got bilingual families as well, because one half of the family speak English, the other half speak Afrikaans. So she, by the time that she learns to talk properly, and she is already saying quite a few words, she is going to have quite a well-exercised brain. As we age, our brains lose mass. So how does the human brain work? The brain is made up of many specialized areas that work together. So we've got this big sponge, for want of any better terminology, sitting inside a fishbowl or crash helmet that has an awful lot of specialized tasks. The cortex is the outermost part of the brain cells. Thinking and voluntary movements begin in the cortex. And we're thinking all the time, whether we know it or not. The thought processes are running. And the voluntary movements are things like your eyelids blinking, your fingers moving, twitches in your hands and arms, breathing. We can control breathing by thinking about holding our breath. But generally, there's also an involuntary movement over there because our lungs are working the entire time. And the brain is controlling all of that. The brain stem is between the spinal cord and the rest of the brain. Basic functions like breathing and sleep are controlled here, which is the part at the back of the head. The basal ganglia are a cluster of structures in the center of the brain, roughly about here, and the basal ganglia coordinate messages between multiple other brain areas. So they essentially controlling the left and the right, the front, the back, and all the other bits and parcels of the brain are controlled right there in the middle. The cerebellum is at the base and the back of the brain, and the cerebellum is responsible for coordination and balance. So this is what happens if somebody smacks you over the back of the head, or you've fallen and you crack the back of your head. Quite often, there's a lack of coordination and balance when you stand up, because now you're not quite sure which end is up, and you tend to want to fall over again. The brain is also divided into several lobes. The frontal lobes, these parts here in the front, are responsible for problem solving and judgment and motor function. The parietal lobes are the ones sort of in the middle to the top of the head, manage sensation, handwriting, and body position. In other words, standing up, lying down, sitting, etc. And the temporal lobes, here at the temporal areas, are involved with memory and hearing. And the occipital lobes contain the brain's visual processing system, which is why, again, if you get knocked over the back of your head, quite often you pass out and you can't see anything. So what does the brain do? What is its job? The brain controls what we think and feel, how we learn and remember, and the way we move and talk. But it also controls things we're less aware of, like the beating of our heart and the digestion of our food. Think of the brain as a central computer that controls all the body's functions. So if you think of the internet or a bank, for instance, if you go into a bank, they tap away on the computer, which is connected, or their little keyboard, in fact, is connected to a central computer. When you use your phone to work the app to do bank transfers, etc., it's also connected to that central computer. It's not part of the bank, it's part of us, essentially, but it's part of that central computer. And so it goes. If anybody's ever heard of saving things to the cloud, now all of our Google things are saved to a cloud, and that is a whole lot of central computers put together that control every single thing that we're seeing, saving, and doing. That is pretty much what our brain is doing. But our brain is a supercomputer of note, because it's a lot better than all these other man-made computers. The rest of the nervous system is like a network that relays messages back and forth from the brain to different parts of the body. Think of a year-old telephone system, where you've got to get a message from one person to another, and you're connected by a copper wire. Nowadays, obviously, it's all wireless, but it's still a similar system, because somewhere there's copper wire involved, whether we're using a cell phone or whether we're using a landline, there's still copper wire involved somewhere, and that is very much how these messages bounce backwards and forwards from the brain to your foot. So when your small toe finds the furniture in the dark, it's sending a message to your brain to say, we need some light over here. And that's quite often why you have a flash of light in your mind at the same time. But it's telling you that there's a problem, and it's sending a nerve message back of pain to say, watch out, there's a problem over here. And it does this via the spinal cord, which runs from the brain right down through your back. And this is what happens when somebody has a spinal cord injury through an accident, is that the spinal cord is now severed, so those messages don't go from the brain to below where the spinal cord was severed. And that is where the problems are coming in. Now, research is happening at the moment, medically, whereby they're trying to work out a way to bridge that break or that severance in the spinal cord to allow paraplegics and quadriplegics to be able to walk again. Because all you really need to do is to get the message from the brain to the legs to walk. And when the spinal cord is broken, that message isn't getting through. And this spinal cord contains thread-like nerves that branch out to every organ and body part. When a message comes into the brain from anywhere in the body, the brain tells the body how to react. So the message relaying from my fingerprint, touch the button on my computer to say, I need the next thing, basically takes a message from my finger up my arm to my brain to say, operate or activate these muscles to dip the finger, to press the button, to get the next line up. It's all quite fascinating and extremely technical. And whoever says we were just randomly thrown together hasn't really learned all about how these finer things work in our body. So, for instance, you touch a hot stove. The nerves in your skin shoot a message of pain to your brain saying, whoa, hot. The brain then sends a message back telling the muscles in your hand to pull away. Fortunately, this doesn't take half an hour to get through. It takes a millisecond because you touch it and, oops, there you go, you need to move your hand out the way. But some people have what's known as peripheral neuropathy, think diabetics, amongst other people. So those little nerves don't work. The message isn't getting through to the brain. So you touch the hot stove, the message doesn't get through, and you burn your finger. Or you burn your foot if you're walking on hot ground. Same story. So luckily, this neurological relay race happens in an instant, in most cases, as I said. So the nervous system is made up of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral meaning outer parts, central meaning this part in the middle of the body. some things in anatomy are quite simplified, whereas other things are very complicated. The brain and spinal cord are the central nervous system. And the nerves that go through the whole body make up the peripheral nervous system. So from the tiniest little nerves in the tips of your fingers, right the way through, everything runs back into the central nervous system. The human brain is incredibly compact, weighing just 1.3 kilos, stuck inside this little skull, which I often refer to as either a fishbowl or a crash helmet, because it's the same sort of effect. It has many folds and grooves, as I've already mentioned, and these give it the added surface area for storing the body's important information. So our central processor over here has got a lot of space to have memory filled up. Unlike an iPhone that only has a set amount of memory in it, some other smartphones have a basic amount of memory, and then you can expand it with memory cards, etc. Pretty much like your computer, for instance. Whereas our brain, we don't need memory cards to plug in, although sometimes it would be a good idea. We've got that surface area that can absorb all that extra memory. So think of a hard drive on your computer or your phone that doesn't have a capacity. It can just take in more and more and more and more and more information all the time. That would be quite fun to have, I think. The spinal cord is a long bundle of nerve tissue, which is about 45 centimeters long and about 1.2 centimeters thick. And its thickest part is here at the top of the head, or at the top of the spine, thinning out as it goes down. And your spinal cord actually ends just about your rib level, and then it goes back down into very, very fine little nerves called that then also branch out into the peripheral nervous system. And it extends from the lower part of the brain down through the spine. Along the way, nerves branch out to the entire body. Both the brain and the spinal cord are protected by bone. Again, very carefully designed, because we have this hard crash helmet, and your spinous processes, or your spine itself, is made up of a cage of bones that protect it. And it's actually quite difficult to damage your spinal cord. So people who have had a spinal cord injury, you must know they've had some quite significant trauma. Same with your brain. And also your chest cavity, just by the way, our heart and lungs are protected by the ribs. So the brain is protected by the bones of the skull, and the spinal cord by a set of ring-shaped bones called vertebrae. They're both cushioned by layers of membranes called meninges, and a special fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. So everything is protected by multiple layers. Think of if you've ever used an external hard drive for your computer and you drop it, it doesn't shatter into a million pieces because it's protected by various layers, just like your cell phone was, by the way, protected by various layers of shock absorbing material. We have a similar sort of thing surrounding our brain and the spine. This fluid helps to protect the nerve tissue, keeping it healthy, and removes waste products. So it's not just a cushion, it's also a nutrient layer. So how does the nervous system work? The basic workings of the nervous system depend a lot on tiny cells called neurons. The brain has billions of them, and they have many specialized jobs. For example, sensory neurons send information from the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and skin to the brain. So when you lick that ice cream, you not only are having messages sent through that this is cold, but also that this tastes good because it's tasted the sugar. And somewhere along the line, it'll tell us that it's not always good for us if there's too much sugar in there. But we can't taste with our eyes, thank goodness. We can't smell with our fingers, thank goodness, because they've got different sensory organs or different neurons in those different areas. Motor neurons carry messages away from the brain to the rest of the body, telling you how to move your fingers, how to move your legs, how to move your head, how to blink your eyes, etc. All neurons, however, relay information to each other through a complex electrochemical process, making connections that affect the way we think, learn, move, and behave. And we train them and program them accordingly. If you've ever watched somebody on a trapeze, I know I'm not about to try that anytime soon, but look at those people and see how they're working, because everything is a very, very complex coordinated unit, all done by their brain, all programmed accordingly. I'm sure most of us are not going to go bungee jumping, but that does put a lot of stress on the brain when you're doing that, but it's also protecting us. So these sort of things can be learned. It's not always a good thing to say, I can't do that, because if you've seen somebody else do it, you know it can be done, and you know that the neurons have been trained to do exactly what it is that they're doing. Just like operating a Zoom or even operating a computer. We learn to do these things. So it's not impossible because somebody's learned to do it. Therefore, we can learn to do it. We've just got to program our neurons accordingly. So some of the best foods that we need to boost our brain and memory, because unlike a computer, our brain is a living organism, just as our nerves are. And living organisms need food. So some of the foods that we need include fatty fish. When people talk about brain foods, fatty fish is often the top of the list. This type of fish includes salmon, trout, albacore tuna, herring, and sardines, all of which are rich sources of omega-3 fatty acids. About 60% of your brain is made up of fat, and half of that fat is comprised of omega-3 fatty acids. And this is what happens to people who want to lose weight. They've become overweight and obese, which is obviously fat. They go on diet, and the first fat that they lose is in their brain. That's a scary thought. Same with moms who are pregnant. Baby needs a lot of fat to develop their own brain and neurons. If they're not getting it from mom's diet, they're taking it from mom's fat source, namely the brain, which is where you have your pregnancy brain, when people start getting forgetful, etc. Your brain uses omega-3s to build brain and nerve cells, and these fats are essential for learning and memory. So if anybody is using omega-3 on a regular basis, you will have noticed that your memory has improved. I know mine has because of it. Omega-3s also offer several additional benefits for your brain. For one thing, they may slow age-related mental decline and help ward off Alzheimer's disease. Pardon me. On the flip side, not getting enough omega-3s is linked to learning impairments as well as depression. And some research also suggests that people who eat fish regularly tend to have more gray matter in their brains than those who don't. Gray matter, and just by the way, for clarification, in your brain you have what's known as gray matter and white matter. We won't get into all those technical bits right now. But gray matter contains most of the nerve cells that control decision-making, memory, and emotion. Here's a surprise for you. Coffee is a good food for the brain. If coffee is the highlight of your morning, you'll be glad to hear that it's good for you. Two main components in coffee, caffeine and antioxidants, can help support brain health. I'm not too sure if we need to let Charlie see this part of the presentation. The caffeine found in coffee has a number of positive effects on the brain, including increased alertness, and caffeine keeps your brain alert by blocking adenosine, which is a chemical messenger that makes you feel sleepy. I think I might have a problem because caffeine never keeps me awake. It helps to improve your mood. Caffeine may also boost some of your feel-good neurotransmitters, such as dopamine. Drinking coffee over the long term is also linked to a reduced risk of neurological diseases, such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. The largest risk reduction was seen in those adults who consume 3 to 4 cups daily. I think I'm in trouble because I only have between 1 and 2 cups a day. And this could at least be partly due to coffee's high concentration of antioxidants. Now, part of what makes coffee bad is the amount of sugar that you put into that coffee, and probably also the milk. So if you take it easy on the sugar and the milk, coffee in general, I'm talking proper coffee, not plastic coffee, is usually very good for you. Blueberries provide numerous health benefits, including some that are specifically for your brain. Blueberries and other deeply colored berries deliver anthocyanins, which is a group of plant compounds with anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. Antioxidants act against both oxidative stress and inflammation, conditions that can contribute to brain aging and neurodegenerative diseases. Some of the antioxidants in blueberries have been found to accumulate in the brain and help to improve communication between brain cells. According to one review of 11 studies, blueberries could help improve memory and certain cognitive processes in children and older adults. Turmeric has generated a lot of buzz recently. This deep yellow spice is a key ingredient in curry powder and has a number of benefits for the brain. Curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier, meaning it can directly enter the brain and benefit the cells there. It's a potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compound that has been linked to the following brain benefits. It may benefit memory. Curcumin may help improve memory in people with Alzheimer's. It may also help clear the amyloid plaques that are a hallmark of this disease. It eases depression. Curcumin boosts serotonin and dopamine, both of which improve mood. One review found that curcumin could improve symptoms of depression and anxiety when used alongside standard treatments in people diagnosed with depression. That's quite an interesting fact there. And it helps new brain cells grow. Curcumin boosts brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a type of growth hormone that helps brain cells grow. And it may help delay age-related mental decline, but more research in this is needed. Keep in mind that most studies use highly concentrated curcumin supplements in doses ranging from 500 to 2,000 milligrams per day, which is significantly more curcumin than most people typically consume when using turmeric as a spice. This is because turmeric is only made up of around 3 to 6% curcumin. Therefore, while adding turmeric to your food may be beneficial, you may need to use a curcumin supplement under a doctor's guidance to obtain the results reported in these studies. Broccoli is packed with powerful plant compounds, including antioxidants. It's also very high in vitamin K, delivering more than 100% of the recommended daily intake in a 1 cup or 160 gram serving of cooked broccoli. This fat-soluble vitamin is essential for forming sphingolipids, which is a type of fat that's densely packed into brain cells. A few studies in older adults have linked a higher vitamin K intake to better memory and cognitive status. Beyond vitamin K, broccoli contains a number of compounds that give it anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, which may help protect the brain against damage. And don't forget to make sure that your broccoli is cleaned properly with a non-toxic detergent, because if you have broccoli that hasn't been cleaned properly, you may be causing more harm to your brain and your nervous system than you actually want to. So please make sure that you clean your broccoli properly. Don't just rinse it underwater. Pumpkin seeds contain powerful antioxidants that protect the body and brain from free radical damage. They're also an excellent source of magnesium, iron, zinc, and copper. Each of these nutrients is important for brain health. Zinc. This element is crucial for nerve signaling, and zinc deficiency has been linked to many neurological conditions, including Alzheimer's disease, depression, and Parkinson's disease. Magnesium is essential for learning and memory. Low magnesium levels are linked to many neurological diseases, including migraine, depression, and epilepsy. Your brain uses copper to help control nerve signals, and when copper levels are out of whack, there's a higher risk of neurodegenerative disorders, such as Alzheimer's. An iron deficiency is often characterized by brain fog and impaired brain function. So if you're suffering from brain fog and you haven't had COVID recently, check your iron levels. The research focuses mostly on these micronutrients rather than pumpkin seeds themselves. However, since pumpkin seeds are high in these micronutrients, you can likely reap their benefits by adding pumpkin seeds to your diet. Dark chocolate and cocoa powder are packed with a few brain-boosting compounds, including flavonoids, caffeine, and antioxidants. So, chocolate is good for you, but it must be dark chocolate, so 80 to 90% concentration of cocoa, rather than the hyper-sweetened milk chocolate, sadly enough. Dark chocolate has a 70% or greater cocoa content. These benefits are not seen with regular milk chocolate, which contains between 10 to 50% cocoa and an awful lot of sugar. Flavonoids are a group of antioxidant plant compounds. The flavonoids in chocolate gather in the areas of the brain that deal with learning and memory. Researchers believe that these compounds may enhance memory and also help slow down age-related mental decline. According to one study in over 900 people, those who ate chocolate more frequently performed better in a series of mental tasks, including some involving memory, compared with those who rarely ate it. Chocolate is also a legitimate mood booster, according to research. One study found that participants who ate chocolate experienced increased positive feelings compared to those who ate crackers. However, it's still not clear whether that's because of compounds in the chocolate or simply because the tasty flavor makes people happy. Got to be quick over here because I've only got a couple of minutes left. Research has shown that eating nuts can improve heart health markers, and having a healthy heart is linked to having a healthy brain. And one study found that regular consumption of nuts could be linked to a lower risk of cognitive decline in older adults. Also, another 2014 study found that women who ate nuts regularly over the course of several years had a sharper memory compared with those who did not eat nuts. Several nutrients in nuts, such as healthy fats, antioxidants, and vitamin E, may explain their beneficial effects on brain health. And vitamin E protects cells against free radical damage to help slow mental decline. While all nuts are good for your brain, walnuts may have an extra edge since they also deliver anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. You can get almost all the vitamin C you need in a day by eating 1 medium orange. Doing so is important for brain health since vitamin C is a key factor in preventing mental decline. According to one study, having higher levels of vitamin C in the blood was associated with improvements in tasks involving focus, memory, attention, and decision speed. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant that helps fight off the free radicals that can damage brain cells. Plus, vitamin C supports brain health as you age and may protect you against conditions like major depressive disorder, anxiety, schizophrenia, and Alzheimer's disease. You can also get high amounts of vitamin C from other foods like bell peppers, guava, kiwi, tomatoes, and strawberries. Eggs are a good source of several nutrients tied to brain health, including vitamins B6 and B12, folate, and choline. Choline is an important micronutrient that your body uses to create acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that helps regulate food and memory. 2 older studies found that higher intakes of choline were linked to better memory and mental function. Nevertheless, many people do not get enough choline in their diet. Eating eggs is an easy way to get choline, given that egg yolks are among the most concentrated sources of this nutrient. Adequate intake of choline is 425 milligrams per day for most women and 550 milligrams per day for men, with just a single egg yolk containing 112 milligrams. So that gives you an idea of what you need to do. Furthermore, the B vitamins found in eggs also have several roles in brain health. To start, they may help slow the progression of mental decline in older adults by lowering levels of homocysteine, which is an amino acid that could be linked to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Also, being deficient in 2 types of B vitamins, folate and B12, has been linked to depression. Folate deficiency is common in older people with dementia. Studies show that folic acid supplements can help minimize age-related mental decline. And I'm going to have to end here because I see I'm now out of time. I will recap on a little bit of this next week and kick in with the balance of this next week. Thanks for joining us, everybody.